use the mic. Yeah, exactly.
I really like how you do this like little intimate portrait of how it's affecting the actors and the troupe, and then you jump into these news stories that are atrocious, so it kind of always grinds you down with the macro, and then it shows you how that it's affecting the micro. How did you come up with that idea? And I think that's a really great way to keep people moving into the philosophies are. And Mariana, I've been thinking and talking to a lot of people. I lived in Russia for a long time. Yeltsin's Russia. I got out when Crimea was taken. But the Russians have a problem right now because even the liberal people like you that live for a long time outside of Russia, and we are totally against the regime in Russia and what they're doing. But Russians, like even the liberals, are being treated in a big blanket of what Russia is doing, and I'm wondering how that's affecting your life here. The theater, even since it's led by a Russian, does that negatively affect people coming to the theater? Because I know that the kind of Russians are, it's going to take a long time for them to overcome the second-class citizen type of thing from what they've been doing in Ukraine.
Yes. So I'll start. So if I understood well, you asked about the idea actually. As I've been doing radio for, oh my gosh, more than 30 years, reading news and doing interviews with people, I always wondered about making a film that would connect the world of the news with the real world, what's really going on there. And this actually was the best and the greatest moment that I could try. And when the war began, and I was reading the news, and I had known already Mariana's theater, I was persuaded that it would work like that. And that's why we made it this way, and I believe it goes well together. Oh, I hope so. So this is the answer to your question. And now maybe Maria wants to talk.
I will speak Russian because my Russian is much better than English, and Nick will help me. So we'll start. Но посещение театра, в театры, люди, которые ходят, к нам ходит много иностранцев здесь, в Праге, потому что много не нонвербальных драм.
A lot of foreigners come to the theater because a lot of the plays are non-verbal.
Надо сказать, что много русских, которые ходили и ходят ко мне, наверное, ходили и ходят, потому что наша позиция, моя позиция им близка.
And many Russians come to see the plays because, in many ways, the political position that they occupy is very much similar to my own.
Думаю, что в этом смысле нам удается тем, что мы делаем, действительно привлекать людей, которые похожи мыслят.
In that way, we can attract, and in many ways do attract, people who are like-minded to us.
Но в чем вы, безусловно, правы, в том, что среди и либералов в России много разногласий сейчас возникает.
But what you're certainly right in is that even amongst the liberals in Russia, there is a lot of division and a lot of contrary opinions.
Я не могу сказать, что я сейчас ощутила, что интерес к нашему театру меньше. Вот это ответ на вопрос. Ответ на вопрос.
And I really don't feel that in light of recent events, the interest for our theatre has decreased. So that would be the answer to your question.
Hi. We really enjoyed the film. Very, very good, very human. And I had one question that came up. I'm actually a journalist myself, although I'm mostly retired now. But I'm always trying to, at one point in the film, there was this talk about this charge that the Ukrainians are Nazis. The Russians are saying that, or Putin is saying that. Wouldn't it have been better, or I guess it's a question, is there some truth to that, some germ of truth that has allowed it to be exploited? I think the Azov Brigade has some Nazi symbols, and then there was, from what I've read, in World War II, there's some alliances from the Ukrainians with the Nazis who viewed them as perhaps a way to liberate themselves against the Russians, which actually, was not that uncommon. Finland was allied with the Nazis against Russia in the Winter War, and so did that make it too black and white when there was some truth to it?
Oh, I will start, and Mariana will add something to what I was saying. What I do know from the media of which I am part of, yes, there are some ultranationalists in Ukraine. I don't know if we can call them Nazis, but what we know from the last parliamentary election in 2019, all these far-right parties all together in the whole of Ukraine had 2.99%, if I remember well, of votes. So we can say, possibly yes, there are some traces of this, but in general, what I believe, and I'm absolutely persuaded, no one can call the whole nation Nazist. I think it's absolute nonsense. And I think, unfortunately, that almost every nation, maybe every nation in Europe at least, and of course in US, has its own Nazis. And I think we are very well aware of this.
Я абсолютно согласна с Васловым. Каждый, если посмотреть на политику и на расклад политических сил в Европе, мы увидим, что нацистов больше, чем нам кажется.
I fully agree with Václav, and as you can see in most countries in Europe, there is a certain degree, a certain population that could be described as Nazis or very far right.
Но что абсолютно безусловно, что сейчас на наших глазах уничтожается народ, называется в риторике российской нацистами, и это абсолютная ложь, на которой поставлена пропаганда.
But what is undoubtable is that currently we are seeing the destruction of a particular people with an entirely false rhetoric of them being Nazis and extremists, and that this is entirely false and cannot be safely defended.
Я надеюсь, что я ответила на ваш вопрос.
I hope I answered your question.
Hi, my name is Anne, and thank you. I very much enjoyed watching this. I will say that honestly, the most inspiring moment of this entire movie was at the beginning of the epilogue when you had, and forgive me, I don't remember his name, talking about how this is what it is, and I'm paraphrasing, this is what it is, and we can only do what we can do. So, what can we do?
Что мы можем делать? Я думаю, что страшно молчать, страшно проявлять равнодушие.
It is dangerous to be silent and not to show your true thoughts and your true feelings about this.
Если я попадаю, лично я, в компанию с иностранцами, западными людьми, которые часто не понимают разницы между Украиной и Россией, украинцами, россиянами.
When I personally am in the company of foreigners, Westerners who don't necessarily know the difference between Russian, Ukrainian, something else.
Я просто начинаю говорить на эту тему, рассказывать, объяснять, что неправда, что Украина часть России, что разные культуры, разные религии. И вот step by step
I try to talk about it, to explain that Russia and Ukraine, it's not the same people, the difference in culture, difference in religion, difference in politics, and step by step go through it.
Sorry, just a follow-up question. I'm sorry. But of course, I'm not Russian or Ukraine. I'm Swedish. Also an enemy of Russia, but fair enough. But he called for people to make a difference in the way that they can. So, irregardless of politics, how can we make a difference? Because I think we all want to support the Ukrainian effort.
я уточняла, кто это просил, я не поняла, о каком идет речь, сейчас поняла.
I was just making sure who you were talking about exactly, who was speaking in the movie.
Я сейчас, и еще раз повторите свой вопрос, я не до конца поняла ваш вопрос.
Can you just clarify exactly the question once again? Thank you.
No, it was the first person in the epilogue, the guy with the ponytail.
Pablo.
Yeah, and he mentioned that we can only do what we can do. And again, I'm paraphrasing. We can only do what we can do, and we can only show up. And so my question is, what is your hope from this movie on what do you want us to do?
Ну, я была всего лишь одним из героев фильма.
Oh, I was merely one of the heroes of the film.
И это, наверное, вопрос к режиссеру.
So it's really a question for the director.
Но я думаю, что повлиять можно только тем, чтобы людей образовывать. Вообще, если говорить глобально. Образовывать, разговаривать, объяснять.
But the real hope is for education, for awareness, for people to really understand what is at stake here.
И мне кажется, что все проблемы, и в основном люди, которые утверждают или участвуют в политических дискуссиях на Фейсбуке, не всегда они так хорошо знают предмет, к сожалению.
And unfortunately, most people who have this discourse online, on Facebook, or in person, I feel do not really understand the subject matter.
И именно такими людьми, которые недостаточно образованы, очень легко манипулировать.
And it is exactly the people who do not know enough about the subject that are the easiest to manipulate.
Yes, I'd like to add something to it. You know, I think that the most of us in Czech Republic and the West, before February 24, 2022, most of us really had a blind eye, and we didn't want to see the evil, because if you don't see the evil, it doesn't exist. That's it. And in 2014, when Putin attacked or annexed Crimea, attacked the eastern part of Ukraine, the West wanted only one thing: just to leave the problem somewhere far away. Had to have very cheap Russian oil and gas and some other benefits and forget it quickly. And it will disappear, everything. We forget it, we don't see it, it will be all right. Because why? Because of greed and because of fear as well that we had from Russia. And I think that during this year, what we learned was we never really can have any deal with the devil, with Hitler of these days, Putin, and all the backing Kremlin. I'm very glad that President-elect Petr Pavel on Saturday compared Putin with Hitler, because now I think it is clear. And what we can do, all of us who were so lazy and wanted only to be in our bubbles, to have our beautiful lives in the never-ending peace in Europe. The matter is, what we can do is to realize that the reality is different. It will be never the same as it was before, at least in our own lives. So everybody can do according to his abilities and skills. It depends. For example, I don't know how many Czech people collected over 1 billion Czech crowns to buy tanks for Ukraine, for example, if you ask what we can do. Not everybody agrees with that. Some people say, oh, stop sending weapons to Ukraine because we need to save the peace. What kind of peace? The peace that Russia will come to Ukraine and take it. It's not a real peace. And we should understand it. And we should understand that all the conditions for negotiations about the peace have to be set by Ukrainian people, not by anybody else. Yes, that's what I think about it.
Thank you. Thank you for answering the question.
I'll just add one thing to it. You can come to things like this. You can talk to people about it. You can donate. You can give an old jacket to a refugee center. If you have a person who has children, they have old toys, go to a refugee center. There's a lot of kids here that don't have any toys to play with, that left Ukraine and left all their toys behind. You can do anything, even the smallest gesture at any type of event. Just bring awareness, talk to people who are saying, oh, I'm done with this war, I don't want to think about it. When we started doing these events, this place was packed, 100 people, standing room only. The next one was 70 people, the next one was 40. Tonight we have about 25. People are tired of it, you can't get tired. And that's what I think Pablo was saying in the film. I'm not going to give up. You're saying, even if I'm exhausted, I'm going to keep doing my job. Your job is to bring awareness, bring people enlightenment of what they're the suffering that's happening. So we shouldn't let ourselves forget that every day terrible things are happening, atrocious things that you could never imagine happening in this day over a year ago, but now we understand it's happening every day. So I think that's more the question, like what can somebody from Sweden do, what can someone from Finland do, what can a person from America do? We can keep fighting to make sure people understand that this is happening and this has to stop.
Я как раз еще хотела добавить, что можно действовать, а важно еще понимать. Этот глагол, который важно. Нужно понимать, что это может быть только начало. Нужно понимать, что война может быть и с другими.
Well, and you can act, of course, actions are important, but what's equally important is understanding and really knowing, and that's something that is very undervalued, and just by finding out more, by continuing to learn, you're ultimately putting us in a better position for the future.
как говорит адвокат, в этом фильме адвокат говорит, что есть вещи, которые черно-белые. Многие люди сейчас говорят, ну это не абсолютно черно-белая ситуация. Так вот, брать чужое нехорошо, убивать невозможно.
And as the lawyer in the movie says, some things truly are black and white. Killing, for one thing, war, taking something that's not yours, and we should recognize these things as such.
Yeah. There was a young man who's first.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for everything that you do. And secondly, I have some friends who are Russian, but none who are living in Russia, and especially not younger ones. So my question is, do you think that Russian teenagers will now be able to better see through the propaganda of their time? And just an add-on, do you think that the children and teenagers who are suffering tremendously on both sides, losing their loved ones because of this unwarranted war, do you think they will ever be able to reconcile in the future?
У меня есть одна знакомая биолог-генетик, которая объясняла, что вот тот страх, который испытывали сейчас дети, убегая от войны под бомбежками, передается на 3 поколения вперед, как ДНК.
I have a biologist friend who specializes in genetics who said that the children, the young, the teenagers who are running away from the bombs, from the war right now, that's something that can get encoded into your genetics for up to 3 generations.
В общем-то, это ответ на вопрос.
General, that's one part of the answer to your question.
А еще, конечно, надо понимать, что Гитлер начал Вторую мировую войну, будучи у власти с 1933 года, значит, 6 лет. А Путин у власти был перед этим 20 лет.
And what really can't get lost here is that Hitler was in power 6 years when he started the war, whereas Putin is in power for 20.
Это значит, что выросло не одно поколение детей, тинейджеров, которые, так сказать, вырастали в пропаганде, в мощнейшей пропаганде.
And this means that there was not just one generation of kids, teenagers, who have grown up in this world of propaganda and misinformation.
Переписались учебники в школах, изменились программы.
Textbooks have been altered in Russia, educational programs have been changed.
Изменились события в истории, и никогда в России не изменились официально за те миллионы, 30 миллионов людей, которые погибли при Сталине.
History in Russia has been rewritten, and Russia never even officially apologized for the 30 million people who died under the Stalinist regime.
В Германии много помогали американцы, возили по концлагерям, немцев, которые не хотели, это тоже заняло много лет, но там это произошло.
The Americans helped the process of learning and understanding the true nature of the Nazi regime in Germany. So they brought Germans, sometimes unwillingly, around concentration camps, showing them what happened. In Russia, that did not take place.
Поэтому, к сожалению, мне хочется надеяться, что через поколение этот конфликт будет преодолен, потому что он абсолютно политический, но, увы, мы не доживем.
So, to answer your question, I truly hope that in several generations the conflict can be recognized for what it truly is and just something that's political and about greed, but it may be the situation that we are not around to see it.
Anyone else? Some more questions?
Is there any English-speaking media would you recommend in order to understand what's been happening since the Crimea invasion until now. Like a source you would rely on.
Я работала на радио «Свободная Европа», это американская радиостанция. CNN, BBC, это все, так сказать, надежные источники информации.
I myself worked at Radio Free Liberty Europe. That's something I rely on. CNN, BBC, Western established media companies.
Кроме всего прочего, важно сравнивать. Принцип западной журналистики состоит в том, что ты не свое мнение рассказываешь, а ты подаешь новость с позиции нескольких источников.
Furthermore, the principle of Western journalism is that people who take these news in don't just recite one news article, they collate and take information from many different ones, and that's important for anyone trying to raise their own awareness and knowledge.
Соответственно, наверное, самое главное – это воспринимать информацию из разных источников и, что связано с образованием, понимать, чтобы это не был один хозяин.
So ultimately what's important is to take in information from different sources and to understand that no source, that you should not prioritize any one source over all the others.
Потому что в России до сих пор много каналов телевидения и много газет. Но, во-первых, там давно работает жесткая цензура, а во-вторых, сколько бы ты ни переключал телевизор, каналы телевизора, заказчик один.
Because in Russia currently there are still multiple media news outlets. However, ultimately the censorship is so great there that no matter which channel on TV you click on, there's only one person it all leads to.
Okay, well.